Hey guys, tonight's Hopper Hot Take. An article that was retweeted by my friend Chris Caruth this evening. Chris, I hope I didn't screw up your last name. I apologize if I did. Anyway, Chris tweeted out an article that was published this week by Dan Novak. It's called Pushed Too Far. Overexertion has claimed the lives of 22 Division I football players since 2000. Many of us know about the case of Jordan McNair. He just won, right, at the University of Maryland a few years ago. There have been several cases of overexertion, exertional heat stroke, exertional sickling. I saw there was an asthma case. There's been quite a few. But again, Division I football players being killed in strength conditioning, that's a problem, right? So one of the things I wanted to look at, the NCAA has not taken steps to get better. They've taken some, but they still haven't done a fantastic job of fixing the health and safety of student athletes. And Dr. Hainline, who is the chief medical officer for the NCAA, is quoted here in saying, says that's sort of the next step. How do we actually legislate health and safety? Now, if the NCAA is trying to figure out how to legislate health and safety at the college level, how in the world do you think we're doing at the high school level? Fortunately, our friends from the Corey Stringer Institute have an answer for that. Dr. Sam Scarnio Miller and Dr. William Adams have researched just that. Their research, which was just recently published, once again, in the Journal of, sorry, I'm looking at all these details here, the American Journal of Sports Medicine, titled State Level Implementation of Health and Safety Policies to Prevent Sudden Death and Catastrophic Injuries Within High Schools. An update. They've been researching this for the last few years, and they've been updating this every August. So it's time for a new update. Now, how does their research work? They go through, they have a rubric that they've created, and within that rubric, they search through publicly available documents on high school state association websites, legislation websites, and places like that to look for the policies and procedures that a high school association has related to health and safety within the different categories. I just talked yesterday in the Hopper Hot Take about the Nebraska State Activities Association and their wonderful heat policy. It's not so wonderful. So how do we legislate health and safety? All right, so one of the things I want to talk about tonight is one of the criteria that they're looking at with this research, and that is appropriate healthcare providers. Now, if you ask an athletic trainer, what's the appropriate healthcare provider for an athletic event? Glad you asked. That's a certified athletic trainer. The certified athletic trainer is trained in the prevention, recognition, acute care, emergency care, rehabilitation, and return to sport of athletic-related injuries. We are trained in emergency situations, whether it's a muscle strain, that's not an emergency, or whether it's a catastrophic brain injury, sudden cardiac arrest, exertional heat stroke, or other cases that can become catastrophic or life-threatening. So, how does America fare at the high school level when it comes to appropriate health care? Well, we also know through the Atlas Project at the Corey Stringer Institute, another great research project from KSI, that only approximately 35% of high schools in America employ a full-time athletic trainer. 31% have somebody part-time, whatever that means. We haven't fully defined that. That means 34% of high schools in America have no athletic training services whatsoever. That's a problem. So, let's look at one of their criteria. One of their criteria in this state level implementation of health and safety policies asks about the healthcare provider. Is a healthcare provider required for contact inclusion sports? Believe it or not, there are only 4 states that do so, that say that they require that. Massachusetts, North Carolina, which is an interesting one. North Carolina requires an athletic trainer or a sports first responder, because a weekend course is the equivalent of a national certification, I will say. The other 2 are West Virginia, who has a football trainer criteria, whatever that means, once again, not an athletic trainer necessarily. And the 4th one is New Hampshire. Now, 4 states say they require it. Excuse me. Another 24 say that they recommend it. They recommend having a healthcare provider available. 24 of them do. Half the country. What about the other 27, if we include Washington, D.C.? What about the other 27 state associations? Why don't they require it? Why don't they recommend it? Okay, so, 24 and 4 is 28. So what about the other 22 who do not take a stance on this at all? And we question why only 35% of high schools in America have a full-time athletic trainer. The state associations don't care. Clearly. They don't care. Now that sounds harsh. It should be. These state associations have blood on their hands when these kids die in athletics. The National Federation of High School Associations and these state associations say they can't mandate a school have an athletic trainer. We can't force them to spend money. They tell us how many umpires have to be at a baseball game, how many basketball officials there have to be, how many football officials there have to be. They tell us what uniforms we can wear. They tell us the dimensions of the field. They tell high schools across America how to spend money, what to spend money on, all the time. But they can't tell us at the high school level how to spend money to protect our student athletes. They can't do that. That's crossing the line. We can't go there. Really? So again, we come back to the statement from the chief medical officer for the NCAA. How do we legislate health and safety? Do you guys realize that up until a few years ago, the NCAA regulated how much food a university could provide for a student athlete? They still regulate a lot of things, but they can't regulate health and safety. I call nonsense. It's time that our state associations at the high school level, it's time that the NCAA steps up to the plate and starts telling these institutions how to provide health and safety. That's tonight's Hopper Hot Take. You guys have a great night.